With just 12 days left to go, Newcastle are still trying to bring in a striker before the transfer window ends. But now, with reports that Brentford want 60 million for Wissa, Samu went off injured, crying in his game last night. Alexander Isak is stood in the hallway with his hat and coat on, dying to get out of the football club. Newcastle have had to open their options further, and reports this morning from The Athletic are that Newcastle have now opened talks with Wolves over the striker Strand Larsen, and a player that Newcastle have been linked with, Nicholas Jackson, has now been heavily linked this morning with Aston Villa. Reports are that Unai Emery is extremely interested in the Chelsea striker, and reports are that should Emery manage to land Jackson, Ollie Watkins would be free to leave before the end of the window. And could that be a late option for Newcastle? Yes, guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Toon Tuesdays, your weekly roundup of Newcastle United news, a series that I have been doing for years now. And I have to say, I'm still calling it the weekly roundup, despite basically every video at the moment being a daily roundup, because there is just so much going on, and undeniably the striker situation continues to be front of headline news. And I have to say, I've already tried to do this video a couple of times now. That's not the first time I've just said my Toon Tuesdays jingle today, because it is just a nightmare. To put it bluntly, it's a nightmare trying to, the intricacies of the Isak situation, the replacing Wilson. You've got the Isak list, you've got the Wilson list, you've got the Wissa situation that just seems to have fallen on its backside. Striker options getting injured. It has been mad this window, and with 12 days left to go, Newcastle now having to open up our options for another striker is just crazy. And at the same time, Luke Edwards at the Telegraph today saying that he stays true to his belief that Isak will stay this window. So we will get into all of that. But first, if you haven't already, subscribe, drop a like if you have been enjoying these videos. I'll try and methodically make my way through, because, as I say, it did become a little bit of a rabbit hole. So we'll start off with Wissa. So, the striker that Newcastle have been linked with all window, and look, I can still see this one happening. I don't think this one's game over. Brentford have already gone and bought their replacement. They already went and got Otara from Bournemouth. They spent 42 million on him. You know, people saying that Newcastle were going to pick up Wilson 35 million. As soon as Brentford had to start paying 40 to 45 for his replacement, it just didn't stack up. But fair enough, Otara, he's younger. You'll have way more sell-on value in a few years. You know, Wissa's going to leave Brentford next year on a free if he doesn't leave. So with that in mind, you could say, well, they should just let him leave for anything. But Brentford did not have a good start of the season. They got slapped in their first game, and it's fair enough they might want our 50 million, but if they got relegated, they would be down hundreds of millions. And I honestly think that Wissa's 10 to 12, 15 goals could be the difference there. So I understandably, Brentford are holding out for the bigger money. Reports are that now, after wanting 50 million at the start, you see, this is the thing, at the start of the window when they said 50, we should have gone, okay, yes, take. Instead, we fought over, no, 45, come on, let it off. And now they've come back with, 2 weeks to go and gone 60, and we've gone, oh. And then obviously in the background, Wizza's spitting his toys out the pram. He's taken Brentford off his profile picture. He's taken it off his Twitter. Reports this morning are that he's set to put in a formal statement. Does that mean he's going to put in a transfer request to try and make his way out? It's messy. It's very, very messy. What he's doing ain't great. We've got it going on with Isak as well. Like, it has just become, as I mentioned at the start of this video, a bit of a nightmare. I can still see the Wissa one coming off. I just think that Brentford are pushing because they want to try and get as much money for him, which I can see why they're doing that. The hopes of having Wissa in the door before the game against Arsenal on Monday is looking less and less likely because of essentially everything that I've just said. So, Newcastle, and Samu as well, quick mention to him. He has been a player that has been heavily linked to had been linked to Newcastle, but as soon as we found out they wanted 80 million for him, suddenly those links died off a little bit. And as it was seen last night and this morning on the highlights from his game, left the field and looked fairly upset after doing so. And the reports are that he could well hold an injury. So not only did Newcastle get scared off by his 80 million price tag, the fact that he's potentially injured or has some form of injury is not going to help that situation either. Again, I would argue that Wissa was on the Wilson list. I would have probably put Samu on the Isak list. I don't think he was quite the Sesko or Ekitike, but just the fact that he was only 21 years old, holds a lot of talent, and in the end holds a lot of potential sell-on value should we bring him in and make him into a superstar, just as we did with Alexander Isak. The £80 price tag is really, really high. And, as I say, PSR wasn't a plan. I wasn't planning on talking about that in this video, but the likes of a Samu make it really hard for us to go and spend that kind of money in case it doesn't work. We've just kind of got off. And people are saying, why are we only going for Premier League players? Why aren't we looking further afield? And look, I was desperate for us to do that this window. In the terms of the midfield situation, I've really liked Ramsey coming in. I really like that move. Malik Chow from over at AC Milan, really liked that one as well. But these are all players that we've been heavily linked with before. It's nothing's a given. Those players may not work out for us. I really hope that they do. But it's clear that Eddie Howe is consistent in wanting to bring in players that he's really heavily researched. I'm still hopeful that Newcastle can maybe do something in the kind of number 10, more attacking, free-flowing midfielder option, just because I hope that with a little bit of let-up on PSR this summer, that fair enough, we don't have all the, richest club in the world, don't have the money to spend, but the idea that we could go a little bit off-piste, a little bit off the cuff, off-roading, bring in a slightly more attacking number 10 vibe player, just to give us a little bit more of an extra, a little bit more of something else. I think because of the Isak stuff, it's just not allowed us to really kind of dip our toes into some other areas. Instead, we've stayed really regimented with what we've done. But at the same time, the reason we'd never done that previously was because it's not the way Eddie Howe plays football, and it's a luxury buy. Like, we are buying to replace players in positions that we know we're going to need. Me asking for, his name escapes me, the Leicester player that we were linked with, 25 million, Kanouse. Really like the look of him. But it's a bit of like a luxury buy. It's something that we don't really need, but would have been really nice. And then I think you look at Samu and you just think the risk ratio there is absolutely giant. Like, Kanousa's 25 million release clause. I'm still sitting here looking at my watch, hoping there's still time. Lucas Paqueta, I don't think it's going to happen, the Paqueta one. But 25 million West Ham want for him. Like, these are like luxury buys, but with the PSR, you just don't know where you are with it. Samu, 80 million. Now you're really pushing it on that one. So instead, Newcastle are trying to look closer at home, and the one we're looking at now is, and reports from The Athletic we're in talks with the Wolves striker Strand Larsen. So the reports are this morning that we've entered talks, but it's not a new report that he's a player we've been linked with. He is a player that was linked earlier in this window. I like him, 25 years old, so straight away 4 years on Wissa. I think if we went and spent, money on him in 3 or 4 years' time, he would still have some potential sell-on value, or it's an extra year. Like, because that's the thing. It's not just, if we buy Wissa and then we can't sell him in 3 years. It's more that in 3 or 4 years at the end of Wizard's contract, he's 32. And then, how much longer has he got left? As you get Strand Larsen at 25, sign him on a 4-year deal, 29, probably can play on until 29, 30, 31, or even at that point, even if we went and sold him for 20 million and you kind of recuperate. And I mean, it is painful, really, to have these kind of discussions over money all the time. Like, because you can't just freely buy and enjoy the spending anymore. And I've no doubt that's how Eddie Howe has felt a lot of this window. But I think Strand Larsen getting 14, 15 goals for Wolves last season, similar to the numbers that Wissa put up, but 4 years younger, and I think it would get goals on our side. So let's just say that Newcastle had the opportunity to bring in both of those players. I wouldn't mind it. The thing is Wissa and Larsen, at this stage in the window, is Wissa and Larsen what could reportedly be, 50 million, 60 million each? That's so much money. And then Alexander Isak would walk out essentially with no profit to us. So that's why Newcastle have really got to weigh up what they actually want to happen here. What do they want the outcome to be? But I like Larsen. I think it's a good one to be linked with. If he was a player that Newcastle brought in, I would feel far more safe to let go of Isak this summer. As I mentioned in my video at the weekend, I thought Gordon looked really good. I thought Gordon was good. I think Gordon's had a bit of stick. I thought Gordon played well. I thought Elanga played well. They just didn't score. But, you can play... Isak can play terrible and score. And that's the difference between a 0-0 and a 1-0. So that's why this situation needs to get sorted out. I like the Larsen one. I have to say that of all the links throughout the summer, the player that I think would probably fit straight into our side, and I think could, if you put him on penalties, could score as many goals as Alexander Isak, is Ollie Watkins. Newcastle were linked with Nicholas Jackson. The fans weren't too happy about it. Understandably why, because he hasn't been great at Chelsea. But, it just shows where we are in this window, where we're now starting to discuss the likes of Nicholas Jackson in a more positive light. I have to say, if I would, again, it's the age demographic, it's what they can bring. I think if Eddie Howe had his chance with Nicholas Jackson, I think he could make him a better player. Getting linked with Højlund as well. Oh, but it's a confidence game. Players go to Manchester United and have the confidence beaten out of them. Players come to Newcastle and Eddie Howe builds the confidence up. You've seen it even with Isak moping on the sidelines. You've got Dan Burn and Mbeumo just giving off great kind of positive energy in the interviews. And I think it's Eddie Howe. I think Eddie Howe brings that. So I think any player that Eddie Howe believes is right to sign and brings into the club will improve. And I think if Ollie Watkins slot in that number 10 situation for us, number 9, I think he would score goals. And if Unai Emery really wants to go and get Nicholas Jackson and bring him in, and the opportunity springs for us to get Watkins, I would really like that move. If you would like to see Ollie Watkins in the team, let me know down below. Strand Larsen as well. Let me know your thoughts on that link too. I think the big one really is, where did Newcastle go, and are we now going to buy 2 strikers off the Wilson list? Essentially, that's what a lot of these players have been. The Isak list was, let's be honest, Ekitike, Sesko. You could even argue that at the time, because as much as people keep trying to tell us that Isak's wanted to leave all of last season, he was putting love hearts on Elanga's post when he signed for the club. That was like 4 or 5 weeks ago. So he hasn't always wanted to go. There was a situation at the very start of this window where I could argue that in fact Delap, João Pedro, that they were on the Wilson list. I think a lot of the players that we have scouted and tried to go for this window have been on the Wilson list. Newcastle tried to put up some big money to get an Ekitike, to get a Sesko, late deals to bring back that kind of Isak option. But now that's where Newcastle have to decide what they want to do. Do they go and buy 2 strikers off the Wilson list in the hope to allow Alexander Isak to leave, which for me would mean 2 Premier League proven players brought in? That's a positive. It means letting go of a player who doesn't want to be here. I would say that's a positive as well. The downsides are it's going to be like 100+ million for what looks to be, 2 players in their late 20s, and probably will bring on very little sell-on value in 2 years. And all of a sudden we're crucified with PSR once again. Or we bring in 1 of the Wilson players and we keep Alexander Isak. Negatives, again, we're keeping a hold of a player who doesn't want to be here. It means that, even when the window closes, he's going to have to reintegrate. And then when he gets back involved, every time we play a game, the commentators are going to tell us, well, doesn't he look good? But he obviously doesn't want to be here. Will he even do well? Or will he mope around? There's loads of risks to keeping him as well. That like both sides hold positives and negatives. The positives out of that one we'll bring in a proven striker, one proven striker. It's Strand Larsen, 25 years old, and Isak. I think, like, sensibly, that is probably what you, in the long term, you hope will work out for us. In the hope that if Isak wants to be a mercenary, let him be a mercenary. As long as he scores 20 plus goals this season, then we can sod off next season. I'll get over it. But what will hurt us for a lot longer is if we, really plunge money into players where we shouldn't have. And then all of a sudden it's 2 years down the line and we can't sell anybody on. At least if we keep Isak and force him to play for us, get him to play for us, then at least that way there's an opportunity to sell him next summer and have a way better strategy going in. The downside is that it'll be every single time he plays, it'll be January as well. Like, it'll be January. He will be the man plastered on every single front page. What's he going to do? So, yes, I like the Strand Larsen one. I do. I'm really interested to see how Newcastle handle this situation. Normally these videos are more an update in the news. Instead, I feel like I've given you a total like philosophy lesson on what Newcastle's summer striker options are with 12 days to go. So if you have enjoyed that kind of, I guess, mind bomb of Newcastle's summer options, then let me know down below. I think whichever way we do it, I'll back Eddie Howe. If he thinks that he can make Isak play and score goals for us, I'll go with it. If he thinks that it's a total lost cause and, that spending, all the other option is, there is a third option. The third option is we buy Wissa or we buy Strand Larsen. We buy one from the Wilson list and then we still sell Isak. And that is probably the biggest risk to reward, because if we sell Isak for the big money now, that's probably the most we'll get for him. We won't get as much next season when he's a year less on his deal. So it's the most we'll get for him, but we're not then forced into spending it like immediately. We can hold it and we can use it in January. We can use it next summer. The risk is that Strand Larsen or Wissa or Ollie Watkins, that I wouldn't mind that the one of them is able to play all season, to play all the Premier League games, to play all the Champions League games. Asula can get involved, in the cup games, get Gordon on for the cup games, but a big reliance on that one guy to smash it. And I think if we're able to do that, if we get a Watkins in, I'm pushing the boat now. Villa getting Jackson, we get Watkins for 50 million. He would be one that I would have more trust to hold his own in all of these, because he's far more experienced in the big games. That we throw it in the wind a little bit and see what happens. But yeah, knowing what Eddie Howe's like, I can't see him doing that though. That's me. That's Rob being brave with those kind of moves. I don't think Eddie Howe would hold the same thought process. I think he would want his two strikers. Like, that was, in reality, he's kept the hold of Callum Wilson for all those years. He wasn't really two strikers. It was the Isak show, and Alexander and Watkins and Wilson was at the side. So we've done it before. Maybe someone else can try and do it again. All right, thank you for watching, guys. There you go. That was the striker mind bomb with 12 days left to go of the window. We will see what happens in the news next. Long story short is we need a striker. Alexander Isak is almost a second thought right now. We get the striker first, and then we talk about what's going to happen with him and whether Newcastle let him go, keep him, or if we get that striker in, if we keep looking for another one, and then that's when we'll really know what Newcastle intentions are. There you have it. Drop a like if you've enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys. Enjoy your Tuesday and the rest of your week. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.